so glad that Jim Gregory gave a really clear explanation of how possibly the largest department in the College of Engineering is managing that. And now we'll hear from a group of representatives from different organizations that will tell us their version of it. And we are going to start with CODA, with Sophia Moore. And we talked a little bit briefly earlier about bus disinfection and sanitation procedures and the like. You can imagine how the transit industry has been affected by the last several months. So Sophia, turn it over to you. We really look forward to hearing your views.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Giorgio, for that introduction. And thank you so much for the opportunity to talk today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sophia Moore. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at CODA. As of September, I've officially been at CODA for a year. And I'm also a graduate from the College of Engineering at Ohio State with a bachelor's and master's in industrial and systems engineering. So go ahead and go to the first slide. So wanted to talk about CODA and where CODA was before COVID. CODA has really tried to support the Columbus area, and last year we had the highest ridership that we'd ever had in 31 years. We had 19 million passengers per year, which is about 60,000 passengers a day. But we had also started to launch some interesting projects such as CODA Plus and CODA Mainstream On Demand that is a little bit different from our fixed route, but allows you to do on-demand services in certain areas such as Grove City. And then we also rolled out Mainstream On Demand, which is for our disability or senior passengers. We also launched some innovative programs such as the C-Pass to help increase ridership in the downtown area on the rush hour lines. And that actually helped increase our ridership by 14%. Next slide, please. But when the pandemic hit, you can imagine that that was a huge hit to many organizations, and CODA was a big part of that. Is we went from that to 60 to 65,000 passengers a day to about 20,000 passengers a day. And we are still at about that 20 to 25,000 passengers a day. And actually last week, we actually increased some of our services as we're starting to see ridership go up. And we went down from 42 fixed line routes to 21, and we actually suspended all rush hour lines as people coming down into the downtown area. And I really liked what Chris Atkinson said about what mobility is, and it's transportation with a conscience. And what that means to me is all the components that he talked about, but we at CODA really need to make sure that we provide a service that's really relevant for what's going on right now and really understand the experience of the customer so we can really understand and fulfill their needs. So what we've done at CODA is we have always kept track of customer service and how we're doing and who our customers are. And I thought that might be really interesting to this audience about who are the different personas that CODA has and how they've been impacted by COVID. So as I already talked about, we were experiencing about 19 million rides a year, and it was divided among 6 different personas. So you see the first one, I'm not gonna go over all 6, I'll go over the first 3 because this group has been the most impacted. First is what we're called the loyal errands, and that was in previous times about 27% of the CODA ridership. Since COVID, that has now gone up to 38%. And let me tell you a little bit more about who those people are. 59% of them have some high school education. They're mostly focused on manufacturing, retail, and healthcare. Of all the personas, they're the oldest, where 48% are over 40 years old. About a third of them say that they ride with us every day, and about 69% of them said they've been riding with us for 4 years. And the other thing that you might see on this chart, it shows you the fewer mobility options to the more mobility options. This group of individuals are the ones that have the least, they likely don't have a license. They may not have access to a car. So they're very dependent on CODA for their transportation needs. When you look at the second group, we're calling Martin, the working core, that group has gone from 24% to 29%. Most of those individuals have a household income of less than $30,000 a year. Few of them have college degrees. Of all the groups, these are the ones with the least college degrees, and many of them ride 6 to 7 days a week and have used CODA for 4 or more years. And again, they also have less mobility options, and they're very dependent on CODA, and they also tend to be individuals who are what we would call essential workers that we are all relying on during this time to make sure everything is still functioning. And then the last group is the long haul, which is kind of about the same, about the 16%, where many of them are working part-time and very few have access to vehicles. And again, they are riding CODA the longest. Most of their trips are at least 45 minutes long or longer to get access to the types of jobs that they're working at. And again, they have been CODA for a long time. But you can really see, I'm not going to go over the other three, but you can see the drop that we've had in the ones that have at least the car, are working 9 to 5, like in the rush hour time periods, or some of the younger groups that we're calling the next gen casual, because they have more mobility options and they have more access to where they want to go, or they have the option to work from home, where the three groups that I covered don't have as many options to work from home. So we've really taken all of this information to heart and trying to understand how can we respond to the community need and those who are really depending upon us right now to make sure that we are providing them mobility options, but also making sure that transportation is safe for them. So go ahead and go to the next slide, please. So how has CODA tried to respond? Very quickly, actually in February, CODA launched the Stop the Spread campaign about making sure that our passengers knew that we wanted everyone to be safe. We were promoting hand washing, sanitizing, making sure people stay home. We were one of the first transit agencies to stop and to suspend fares, and we're still on suspended fares, and to do rear boarding. This was a lot for our operators to make sure that we were lessening their impact with the public by having rear boarding. And then again, focusing on suspending fares to be able to allow people who needed transportation have that access to that transportation right now. We also, with easing the demand on the frontline workers, we still have a limit of 20 passengers per vehicle. Again, we want our customers to feel safe as well, and as they're riding our system and not contribute to the existing pandemic. As David Cook already talked about, we've been working with CAR to talk about sanitation protocols to make sure that we are keeping our vehicles as sanitary as possible, but also focusing on innovation on what we can do in the future to continue that process. We are sanitizing our vehicles 3 to 5 times a day. We are doing an additional antimicrobial solution on all transit vehicles. And then we've doubled the cleaning of all of our shelters. As many other groups, we have incorporated a mask requirement on all of our vehicles. But we've also done some interesting services. We've offered some dynamic service. So as I just mentioned, we are limiting 20 passengers per a vehicle. However, sometimes there's more than 20 passengers that want to be on the vehicle. So we're utilizing our paratransit group to follow our vehicles to pick up individuals so we weren't leaving anybody else behind. Because we know that many of them rely on us. They rely on us to get to work. They rely on us to get to services. So we want to make sure that CODA was there for them as much as possible and offering that dynamic service if someone could not get on a vehicle. And that service in particular helped about 5,000 passengers a week, and we're still offering that service. We also offered an on-demand service in the Northeast area. We suspended some lines in some areas, but we were getting some phone calls in our customer service center about, individuals' inability to get to services or their place of work. So we launched an emergency on-demand service where it's very similar to what you might see with an Uber or a Lyft, where they could request a smaller vehicle to come to one of our transit stops and take them to different other transit stops in that area. Last week, we actually we're one of the first transit agencies to offer bus on demand. So in that same area, instead of the smaller vehicles, we're actually doing bus on demand with larger vehicles. Again, you can request a ride at one of our transit stops in the Northeast area, and we are currently, we've done a soft launch of that, are experiencing about a 10 to 12 minute response time where a bus will be there at the transit stop to take you to your location. Lastly, we want to really make sure that CODA is in touch with the community and that we're supporting everybody during this time. We partnered twice with Bob Evans to help with food delivery. Well, we actually had a Bob Evans semi-truck come with about 20,000 meals to a CODA site. And CODA used our vehicles to transport those to about 13 different agencies of need in the Columbus area. And lastly, we have partnered with Columbus City Schools and COSI to make sure that we are part of helping that solution with the digital divide. I know that's a topic that we all know that in some of the areas who don't have good broadband service, it is really hurting their opportunity to get access to schoolwork or other things that may be online. So we've partnered with COSI to be able to bring STEM opportunities where our vehicle is actually the Wi-Fi hotspot. We have probably had about 20 events with COSI and CODA, and so far we have been able to reach about 1,200 students that have come to our events where they have the opportunity to download STEM material that they can use at home that do not require broadband. So basically they were able to download 1 week of STEM material that they could do at home, and they used CODA as a Wi-Fi hotspot to get access to those materials. And I think those are things that you might not think a transit agency would do, the food delivery and the Wi-Fi. But I think it's making sure that we bring opportunity to people and not just take people to opportunity. And we take that to heart very much during this time, and I can see us making sure that we continue that. So thank you very much, Giorgio, for having the opportunity to speak a little bit about what CODA is doing during this time.
Thank you, Sophia. This is really fascinating. You know how much we love CODA, and we hope to be able to do a lot more with you going forward. For those who may not know this, Sophia's boss used to work at CAR. Joanna Pinkerton, President and CEO of CODA, used to be the Senior Associate Director of CAR. So it is natural for us to have a very close relationship, but it is especially enlightening for us to see the vision that CODA has in understanding and reinventing transit. And yes, the pandemic has given us all of us a bit of a push, right, to rethink things. And I think that CODA has really made the best of a difficult situation. Now it's a great pleasure to introduce Jim Glynn from General Motors, and we're going to shift gears a little bit, but the story, the background is the same. How does General Motors deal with all of the change that we have faced in the last several months? Jim.
Great. Thanks, Giorgio. Really pleasure to be with everyone and all the friendly Buckeyes again. I'm also a graduate, like Sophia, from the Industrial and Systems Engineering with a master's degree a long time ago. But I am thinking when I reflect back on those days and then my career at General Motors, it's certainly prepared me well to handle engineering and manufacturing assignments over the last 30 plus years. So my most recent assignment is I have responsibilities for workplace safety globally. And so obviously the pandemic, squarely fell into quite a few people's laps, including my own. So what I want to do is just share a little bit of our journey and how we dealt with this at General Motors, and take any questions you might have. So John, if you can go to the next slide. It really started, one of the benefits of being a multinational company is, we were a part of this virus at the beginning with our operations in China. So we had the opportunity to really learn and see what was going on and how it impacted the workplace early. and then watched it, quite frankly, with our operations. We have extensive operations in South Korea and Thailand and India. As we watched this virus spread and see the impact, we started seeing the same things, and we started learning and implementing on the fly very quick protocols in order to manage this. And by the time it reached the North America and South America, I think we had a pretty good game plan lined out in terms of how the virus lives, how it's spread, and how do we prevent infections in our workplace. And so that's what I call the hard and fast, the science of the virus. And we worked hard in three main areas of precluding COVID-19 from entering our site. So how do we test people ahead of time before they walk into our facilities? And then how do we keep it from spreading? And that's kind of the sanitization efforts, increased cleaning cycles, especially in the common areas, in cafeterias, locker rooms, break areas, but also at the operator level. And how do we do that in a thoughtful way? And then finally, as people do enter our workplace, and as they might self-declare and say that they are not feeling well, how do we handle that and do it commonly across the enterprise and across the footprint? I'm not just talking manufacturing facilities, I'm talking engineering facilities, headquarters facilities, et cetera. So we need to treat cases the same and make sure people get the medical treatment they need. So, and all in the midst of this, if you remember, in the springtime, it was pretty chaotic. I mean, we had opinions on how to deal with things from the federal level, from the each and every state level, and then, quite frankly, at the local levels and some of the counties and cities that we operate in. And so one of our biggest challenges is to make sure that all of these enterprises, all these functions understood that General Motors wants to be a part of flattening this curve. We want to be part of the solution, and we weren't trying to disregard things. So we worked very hard at every level of government and every level of some universities to partner up with to understand the things we have to do. And then, quite frankly, with all of our suppliers. So if and when we did get the opportunity to open up our facilities, we're only going to be as successful as our supply base that come literally from around the world. So we needed to share our thoughts, our protocols, our ideas, our approach, and do that literally globally all at the same time. So, and then, the things that I mentioned that we're familiar with, perhaps, or you might think of it as a US thing, but we saw the exact same behavior and concern, whether it was Canada, US, Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, Argentina. So the things that we put in place, we were able to use over and over again to try and impact and be a part of the solution. Those 6 boxes across the bottom aren't anything that would be a surprise to you, but early on, it was very important to make sure everyone knew that these are our commitments and things that we're going to do differently, so that when we do have the opportunity to open up our operations, we can do it safely. And each one of those, think of those as chapters of a book almost, that have a lot of information behind it on how to do that and how to do it commonly around the world. So that was our challenge, and that was an important thing to get accomplished in order to manage the virus, let's call it that. But if you go to the next slide, what was really the most important in my mind, and I can't take credit for this, I have to tell you that it's a little eye-opening when our CEO looked at all of our preparation to return to the workplace. Mary Barra looked at it over a weekend, literally, and said, this is good, it's comprehensive, I like it, but you know what? We're not even thinking about it from each and every employee's viewpoint. And that was kind of an aha moment, because we attack things by leaders and engineers and, get the science, get the hard stuff down, and we'll go to work. But we forgot the soft side, quite frankly, and this is proven out to be the most important thing, is to recognize we all have some apprehension and have been touched by this virus, and we need to think about it from many different perspectives. And And so that's really what we really worked hard at doing and continue to do, quite frankly. We started reaching out to all of our employees that were at the time home, and each and every person had to decide and whether or not they wanted to leave the safety of their homes and their families and enter this workplace. And they didn't quite frankly understand all of the work we've done to prepare the workplace for them to return. So we literally reached out in every way, shape, or form we can think of at a very large level and down to each individual person, and tried to find them the way they need information. So we used Facebook, we did radio and TV and print information at the local level. We had leader videos that we posted on each individual site Facebook page. We literally sent home a care package to every employee globally that explained. It was a letter from Mary, our CEO, telling people that we want to let you know that we have your safety at heart, and these are the things you can expect, and these are our commitments to you. Inside of that was also a pamphlet that explained all of the safety protocols we have in place and why they're important. And then finally, we gave each and every person, each and every family, 10 masks that we made in one of our facilities, so that they can use it for themselves and their family members. So the important thing was reaching out to every employee, because everybody has some level of anxiety about re-entering the workplace. And then another important point that we kind of learned as we went through this is leaders need to lead. They need to be active and set the tone. And as people return to the workplace, our leadership was out in front, welcoming people back into the facilities, being visible. We had people from the parking lot literally experience the protocols that we told them about, in terms of physical distancing, of answering the CDC questions, sanitizing your hands, putting your mask on, having your temperature checked. All of that happened from day one. And that was an important thing to let people know it is different. And we do care about you. And we are going to do this each and every day, and for each and every person that enters our sites. And so our leadership, being engaged, being in front, and then having small safety briefings led by our leaders of every site. And again, by our leader of every site, that means if you're an engineering facility, the leader of the engineering facility welcomed people back into the workplace. And so it's not just a plant thing, in other words. And so it was incredibly important to set the tone and to show we care and demonstrate empathy and helping each other get through this anxiety that we all have. And then we also did a lot of work to get high velocity feedback, I call it, is get continuous improvement. Ask people, what are their insights? What do we do well? What is not going so well? And what can we do to improve? And day one was a welcome and safety briefing and get things people get used to the protocols. Day 3 of the workplace was we pushed a survey, a short survey, 4-question survey. Do you understand the protocols? Were they explained well? Do you understand how they'll keep you safe? Any ideas you have for us to improve? And one open-ended question to help us on that. And just asking that question was hugely important. We got a lot of feedback and we took action. Day 5 of workplace was breaking down into small groups and processing all this information and working together on that so that we can improve what we're doing. And then finally, and it was very interesting to me to listen to Jim Gregory when he mentioned this whole thing has started us thinking very differently about a workplace safety, and not just injury reduction, but our health and well-being. One of the thing that makes the virus so harmful to us is any underlying conditions, physical health conditions that you have. So obesity, hypertension, diabetes, that makes you even more vulnerable to this virus. So why not work on that now and work on that to make ourselves healthier so that we can so we can fight off this virus both now and then in the future if there is another pandemic, and we fully expect that to happen. And then you couple that with the emotional safety. Things that exacerbate the physical safety things, like I mentioned, in hypertension, obesity, diabetes, things like fear, anxiety, depression can exacerbate those conditions. So how do we think about that differently, and how do we include that into our workplace safety thought process? And then finally, of course, the inclusion part of this is, how do we fight discrimination? How do we learn about the inherent biases we all carry with us? And how do we include everybody so that everybody feels comfortable bringing their whole self to work, and how important that is for us to do that and to strengthen ourselves as a team. And so that's my point, is we're expanding our thought process. We're thinking about this very differently. In fact, we talked very candidly about, we don't want to go back to the old normal because that wasn't so great. It's our future that we got to think about, and we have to use this as an opportunity to learn from and to grow from. And so that's really our focus right now, is to expand our view of what workplace safety really means, and to make it so that everybody feels comfortable bringing their whole self to work. So, and just to summarize, think about this from an impact standpoint. All of our operations are back to work. Most of our engineering labs and facilities are open. Where people have to come to work, we can and do, and we're doing it well. So if you took a snapshot at a high level, the left column is kind of the facts and figures. There's some 110,000 employees globally that are working from work. When we have another 55,000 people that we care about every day that come on our sites, and contractors that we care for their health and their wellness and their safety. And so we include them in our GM family. And then there's a whole nother category of 45,000 or so people that are working from home. And we have to think about what workplace safety means to them, and how do we do that, from ergonomics to chairs that are comfortable that you're going to sit in, and all of that. So all of those things are really important, and we have to think differently. And then the right side is kind of the anecdotal side, if you will. We had management, each and every leader in the company needed to take protocol safety training to understand their responsibility to the protocols and to engage their folks. It's not 100% because there's 45,000 people that aren't back to work yet. So think about that in terms of returning to work training. We have over 20,000 ideas, suggestions, and confirmation of the work that we're doing. And that's what I mean by high velocity feedback. A lot of feedback, a lot of continuous improvement ideas that we've implemented. And we're pretty proud of the fact that and I think the number was 93% truly understood the protocols. They understood how they kept them safe from the virus, and understood that it's their responsibility to wear the PPE to protect themselves and protect their coworkers. And so it's been really positive feedback. And a lot like Jim, Gregory mentioned to us, is that, we could be pretty good working remotely, but we prefer to be together. But where we can't, we can do it pretty well, and overall, it's been very positive feedback from everybody. So for sure, the COVID-19 pandemic has altered the way we think, the way we operate, and the way we will be in the future, and it's been a very good thing for us. So Giorgio, I think that.
Jim, that was wonderful, and we really appreciate your sharing this. And also we appreciate how fortunate we are that you agreed to do this, because you are in a position of really being able to see across the entire corporation. That is quite a responsibility. Thank you for that.
A lot of fun. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. And I think the next step will be to hear the perspective from the viewpoint of our good friend and neighbor Honda. And I think Christina Kennedy is up for that next presentation.
Great. Thank you, Giorgio. Good afternoon. Christina Kennedy here from Honda's University Partnership Office. By brief way of introduction, my office supports university engagement via research initiatives, workforce development, and community and philanthropy efforts. Of course, we do engage with CAR in a number of ways, in addition to research, including student engagement, recruitment, and tapping into the short courses for our associates. So Giorgio, there's your plug for short courses. Obviously, COVID has had an impact on the auto industry. We've seen disruptions through manufacturing suspensions of our operations. Many of our associates continue to work remotely, similar to what Jim shared from the GM perspective. And we've seen dips in auto sales. But with the rebounds in recent months, we do remain hopeful. So in response to COVID, and despite the difficult business conditions, Honda has supported the COVID relief efforts in a number of ways. Some of those are shown here by bullet point. I'd like to highlight just two of these for the purpose of this discussion. First is the Honda Odyssey Retrofit Project. A team of our Honda engineers here at our R&D office in Ohio came up with innovative ways to support patient transport efforts for the city of Detroit through retrofitted Odysseys, including plastic barriers, modified HVACs to separate flow from front to back. These vehicles were one way we were able to bring our technical capabilities into the community. Additionally, as you might imagine, these retrofits were also captured internally to support our test engineering divisions to ensure that our associates remained safe and healthy while maintaining test capabilities and job function. Another item I'd like to highlight, and thank you for putting me after GM because this is a nice marriage of the two. I'd like to highlight a project that came from our partnership with GM. So specifically through the fuel cell system manufacturing operations, an opportunity was realized to repurpose existing capabilities to produce hand sanitizer. Of course, many of you have seen distilleries playing in this space in recent times to switch operations from alcohol to hand sanitizer products, but maybe not expecting auto OEMs to step in here as well. So, with that, we produced 60,000 gallons of hand sanitizer, a majority of which was donated to medical efforts throughout both Ohio and Michigan. And finally, with respect to supporting our associates and local communities, Honda deployed the COVID Community Support Program, which provides further support and mechanisms for associates to get out in the community and virtually volunteer, giving both talent and resources to support the COVID battle. Anything from sewing face masks to providing resources to combat food insecurities. So this is just a quick highlight and overview of some of the ways that Honda has stepped in to help with the COVID relief efforts. Of course, a number of initiatives have been realized internally, similar to some of the things that Jim covered from the GM side. So we're trying to keep our associates safe and healthy, but also trying to work in the communities that we live and work in to support this relief effort. So short and sweet, thanks for the time and opportunity to share with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christina. Really well done. It's so great to hear of all of these fantastic initiatives. And we'll continue moving right on with Ron Reese, who's going to speak on FCA activities in this area.
Yeah, thank you, Giorgio, for the introduction. My name is Ron Reese. I also am an OSU alum. Graduated with an ME degree a long time ago, back when Robinson Lab was a thing. If you can go to the next slide, John. So this is really just a slide that tries to highlight, what COVID, how it's impacted our company and what we've done in response. I'm not going to, what's a redone slide? Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, I had to look for the text. I'm not going to read all of the bullet points, but I am going to read the title because I think it really conveys, as Jim was saying, the tone set from management. And the top text on the slide, safety and well-being of our employees and communities is our first priority. That, in a nutshell, summarizes our approach. That was actually copied from a slide that Mike Manley had prepared, our CEO. And as Jim said, with that sets the tone for the entire company and how we move forward. So A lot of these will sound very familiar. I'll kind of go through the text quickly and maybe point to the pictures as they fit the text. So remote working is established globally and where feasible. So like everyone on the call, remote working is now a very popular thing. Our plants are all open, our labs are open, but quite frankly, it's really just the personnel that need to be there are there. If there is a need to go into the office, we can, but the bulk of our engineering staff, if you will, are working remotely, and that's true worldwide. And also, like Jim, we had a bit of a head start, so to speak, having business in China and Italy. We were maybe a bit better prepared here in the U.S. Than others, only because we've had that experience and kind of knew what was coming. But as we've made it commonplace to work at home, we've also made it a bit more friendly for customers to shop at home. So we've deployed online retailing so people can actually shop and buy cars from home and actually have home delivery of vehicles. For the workplace, PPE, like everywhere, is now commonplace. And if you look at the top left, those three pictures are essentially different snapshots of how it now looks to enter our facilities. So again, commonplace in plants. Standard procedures, as everyone is now doing, social distancing, sanitizing. Also reconfigured our workstations in the plants to help with the social distancing, and where that wasn't possible to lessen the contact, if you will, of coworkers. And the top right couple pictures, you can see examples of that. We found many different ways of repurposing welding curtains. Uses never envisioned, I think, when welding curtains were invented. Yeah, next bullet, we repurposed some of our capacity, produce protective masks, face shields, and ventilators. And on the right side, third picture down, the clean room picture is a picture of making the ventilator components. In terms of face masks, we've made a lot and we've donated a lot. We've donated almost 7 million face masks in North America. And the last couple bullets, I'm just going to really speak to the numbers. We did something else that we're very proud of, and that was taking care of local communities and specifically our kids. And the bottom left picture, I must admit, is my favorite photo of the mix here. And you know, FCA properly has fed over 5 million kids, and in partnership with No Kid Hungry, we provided nearly additional 10 million meals. So again, core to the theme is the safety of our employees and the communities in which we work. So hopefully that gives you a little flavor of what FCA has done in face of the new normal, so to speak. So thank you.
Ron, thank you very kindly. This was really an excellent summary, and congratulations to all of your colleagues who have made this possible. This is really great. And we'll move on and hear from Gary Parker of Cummins.
Hey, thanks, Giorgio. Glad that we can share here. So let's go on to the next slide. You know, one view of this, at least for Cummins, is we kind of view this as something going both ways, right? So we know that if we boil it down to the basics, COVID-19 impacted Cummins sales and the workforce. But at the same time, aggressively working towards flattening the COVID-19 curve has been one of the key missions for the company. Again, Gary Parker, I'm a director of engineering programs with Cummins. Let's jump to the next slide. Quick view of our timeline. We were definitely out in a little bit of a head start on this. We have 10 Cummins facilities in the Hubei province that were shut down in late January. So very much right around the timing of the Chinese New Year. In fact, one of our major technical centers actually is in Wuhan. And so we immediately had the China travel ban in place. So in March, we were already in a mode of having significant global plant closures. We had the majority of employees at this time working from home, beginning to develop our safety playbook, considering social distancing, tracking, community spread, testing, PPE, and other new procedures and safety operations. And in this case, Cummins, we weren't acting in a vacuum. We were taking very similar approaches that what you'd heard from GM and others in terms of working with communities, universities, and other businesses to help to advance and create playbook. And we also, at that point, went ahead and withdrew our financial guidance due to the uncertainty with COVID-19. We got to April, we announced salary reductions. So our CEO, Tom Linebarger, took a 50% salary reduction. Reductions of 25% also occurred for directors and above, and reductions in salary for all of their employees in the U.S. between 10 and 25%. And it also came with a reduction in hours. So for me, I could say I actually have enjoyed right now about 5.5 months of 3-day weekends, but that's going to end here pretty soon. Cummins really, I think, started to kind of turn the corner here and really start moving on the offensive. In April, we announced our partnership with 3M to increase production of filters. So these are the PAPRs. You can see a picture of that. Really just kind of help our frontline medical workers be safe as they work towards executing their job. In May, we announced our partnership with DuPont to start making N95 respirator masks. We also began the process of making surgical masks as well. We move on then to the June timeframe. We published our Cummins Safety Work Playbook really as a release, and this was really stretching not just again with the company, but our whole supply base and in the community to ensure that we're all operating safely. In fact, just check that document is up to Rev 14 just within the last month. So it's an ever evolving, evergreen playbook that the company is operating by. By the time we got to July, some of the initiatives that we had earlier in the year, we started to see some pretty big impacts with that. So we had shipped out nearly 14 ton of media to help us with the mask cause. So we had over 8 million masks produced with the media for the N95 and surgical mask areas, and over 41,000 material media for 3M's PAPRs. And clearly this was a case where we were helping to execute our network and capabilities all around the world, from here in the U.S. and Wisconsin and Tennessee, with respect to the media itself, and even out in Korea, where we had some supply efforts there as well. So then we got to September, and really, and this is a common message that we've heard for everyone, is this: we've been in this season for several months, and the notion of hitting the reset button is true for all of us, right? There's been a lot of learning. We know that we've got lots of new ways of doing business, and these new ways are emerging, and we're just recognizing we're not going back, right? So all of us have experienced lots of change, and the amount of learnings are tremendous. So we've had cases where we would bring everybody in around the world to come to a particular site to get service trained, and so that process has had to go to virtual quite a bit, and we're finding it's actually connecting and reaching more people faster and better, and so why would we go back, right? So there may be some elements of that where we might need to have the on-site piece, but that's just one example of many examples that are happening inside the company. So the last point there, if we just forward it one more, is we must not pick that piece up. So in October, we are really coming back to full force. So that's an effective thing that's happening for all of Cummins by the time we hit October 1st. So thank you.
Gary, thank you very much. And I have to say that as a general comment, to hear from Coda to Cummins, all of the and I know that in similar initiatives is really quite encouraging, and it shows quite a bit about the capabilities that collectively we represent. So thank you for taking the time to prepare these presentations and to share your thoughts with us. Really appreciate it, and I think we all learn from one another. What we're going to do in the next step of stage of our meeting is